Hey, how's it going, guys? I was actually watching a TikTok that kind of put me down this thought rabbit hole of our mental health institution. And there was a girl who worked for the mental health institution that basically made a joke that basically was talking about how she enjoyed sedating inpatient people in a mental health clinic and how it was like a fun part of her job or something like that, which honestly, that's absolutely twisted. I don't see any reason why I can justify behavior like that. But it brought me to the bigger problem with our mental health institutions that we have a ton of people who are not qualified to be caring for the people who have been brought to the edge or had a bad life and had the natural response and are in turn basically treated like they are crazy. And we're seeing the mental health of our country and our world basically go down dramatically because the standard of living is getting harder to maintain. There's high stress, uncertainty, and guess what? It's not rocket science to figure out. You don't have to be a registered PhD therapist to understand that, of course, that is going to cause mental health problems. Of course, that's going to cause people to be stressed out, on edge, lashing out, behaving worse. Because it goes back to basically a time in my life when I was younger. I was put through the mental health institution because I was getting picked on a lot. And long story short, I had retaliated against one of my bullies and got pulled into a mental health clinic, and they wrongfully diagnosed me with a specific disease and forced me to pay for medications and blood work that I did not need. I was just having a natural response to being ostracized, to being picked on, and I had lashed out. And if you put enough stress on a person, they start acting out. I don't see why, to me or anyone else, that's abnormal. And just a disclaimer, I don't want to say that all forms of therapy are bad, or if you need someone to talk to that you probably shouldn't see a shrink, because of course there are people who have benefited from a psychologist or anything like that, any sort of treatment, because there are some depressive disorders out there. There are some anxiety disorders. There are people who have abnormal thinking patterns. But we tend to dismiss natural responses because we think it's a mental illness, or we think that these people are crazy because they're having a natural response to a bad environment. Basically, institution that is supposed to help people has basically been formed to gaslight the public, and people are supposed to trust their institutions, and the faith in the mental health institutions are going down as the days go on. And even then, when you see memes where when I can't pay my therapist and you see Hank Hill shouting, "You're a big baby," right? That kind of speaks wonders, because now people understand that a lot of this quote unquote help is just monetary. And the therapist really isn't there to help, at least some aren't. I know that there's probably some that want to make a difference. Like, one of my buddies was a therapist because he genuinely wanted to make a difference, and now he has foregone his position and he is moving on to doing things that make him happy, like hike and everything like that. It's a little harder to pay the bills in his area, but at least he says, "I'm happier," and he just seems to be in a better state of mind where he's doing what he feels is in his best interest. And that's probably the best way I've ever seen someone who's qualified to be a mental health expert look after their mental health, is by saying, what are the outside factors around me that are causing me to act out? And how does this go into our typical society, specifically in America where I live? Because why are people so depressed? Because, well, one, we have too much emphasis on social media. We play the comparison game thanks to these big titans on social media, because we have a gigantic space gap where big time influencers who make shallow content make millions of dollars, where your average working person trying to be a collective to a system, which is a very noble way of living your life. You're not asking for too much except for what you need to get by and live a normal, healthy, happy life with your family, those people are absolutely getting shafted right now. Where we're reaching near French Revolution levels of wealth inequality, where it's the quote unquote beautiful people with their smartphones and their influences and their followings, and then everybody else who is actually willing to work and make a difference. Now, there are some lazy people out there, don't get me wrong, and those people should be reprimanded as such. But to the people who actually work because they want to make something of their lives and of their families and build their lasting legacy before they leave this realm, it seems like it's just an uphill losing battle where no matter how hard they try, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Couple that with how far people are willing to go to get this quote unquote social media fame. Like, I literally saw something on Instagram where a woman was exploiting her son who had just lost his dog so she could get likes and attention. Now, sure, you could argue that there's some financial incentive there so she could look after her son or something like that, but you'd have to assume that she's going to use that money towards her and her son and not just for herself. And that is a horrible parental figure to have. That's going to scar the kid for a very long time because that's the parental model of love that he's going to be baselined with. Just like how we don't trust our fellow human beings and our neighbors anymore because everybody is shallow, superficial, self-interested. We don't have very well attention spans. Our best friends aren't even listening to us. And it's funny because if you look at it, most therapy, which is just talking to someone because you need someone to listen to, it's amazing that that's a very high value skill because it says something about how our willingness to understand each other and our willingness to look out for each other as fellow human beings has always gone down the toilet. Now, I'm not always the best example of getting along with other people, but trust me, when I show disrespect, it's typically because someone shows me disrespect first. Meaning I have a ton of moments in life that I am not proud of, but it has never been just because I wanted to stir things up for fun, and honestly, I can't say the same thing about everybody else. But we tend to throw each other away when it's not working or that partnership isn't there, or a one-way partnership where one person isn't what they thought it was going to be. And even if you're not leaving a toxic or abusive situation, you just think the grass is greener somewhere else, even though the grass on your side was still pretty green to begin with, that you threw them away thinking you could find better. Meaning we don't value each other as human beings, and it's become not just a dog-eat-dog world, but it's a dog-eat-dog world where the dogs are starved and mentally tortured and basically told that it's their fault that they live this way. And in a sense, nobody's making us treat each other like absolute garbage. We can turn away from the social media and try and do better every single day. I know a lot of people who turn away from this and try to be value to the community. And you know what? Those are the people I tend to surround myself with, and I tend to shun my life away from a lot of other people who just don't think that way. But those normal basic human compassions are outsourced to therapists because they're considered a skill nowadays. And I think from our perspective, that's absolutely atrocious. So all in all, it's a gigantic way and a gigantic mixture of a bad therapy institution and basically a sick society that has forgotten its values. And this is exactly why I try and push to be around people who you love and who care about you, and where you could have a two-way street relationship where you guys are looking out for each other, supporting one another, having healthy relationship dynamics with one another. And you might just see your relationships and your mental health go sky high because you're actually in a world where you have something worth living for versus this shallow void that a lot of society tends to be falling into. Because like I said, like as a major collective, I think society is in for some dark times. But if you get into some valuable groups where you're not dependent on a broken therapy system or a broken society, but people who are valuable and love you and want to see you succeed, you will be doing better in these times. But that's all I got to say. Thank you guys very much for listening. What are your thoughts? Do you think the mental health industry is busted? Do you think that us as a society needs to do better? Please leave a comment below, and I'll see you next time.